Thato, thank you so much for your time. So before we get into the other aspects, looking at the UK and the Eurozone, etc., what's your sense of global market sentiment right now, given the fact that we're pushing ahead with aggressive policy and yet we're still dealing with the stuff that we've been focusing at least on over the past few weeks or so?
Good afternoon, Nastasia. Market sentiment at the moment seems to be taking somewhat of a risk-on perspective. We have the first positive week in the S&P 500 and MSCI World Global Equities in 4 weeks. So we've had quite a few weeks of negative downturn. And of course, in August, there was quite a bit of negative sentiment from a mix of policy measures from the Fed, as well as concerns around impending recession in various markets. But yesterday's comments, or hawkish comments from the Fed, saying that they will continue on their path to taming inflation while still trying to manage the economy and prevent social distress. The market took those to be quite positive signs, as well as the 75 bip hike that you mentioned from the ECB. There also seems to be a bit of a positive view with regards to Chinese demand possibly picking up in the last quarter of the year. We obviously know that there have been increased lockdowns recently as well, but some participants in the market feeling that this is not going to be as prolonged as what we saw for Shanghai lockdowns. So some positive perspectives seen today on the markets, and the dollar has softened, and we've seen risk assets responding favorably.
So let's talk a little bit about the British pound here, because the weakness is the story here, the predominantly, I suppose, call it dollar strength. But perhaps you can give us a little bit more perspective when it comes to the underlying challenges faced by the UK economy.
The pound, of course, has weakened considerably year to date, and we now have the pound at levels not seen since 1985, which is quite some time ago. So I believe the pound to the dollar is at 1.14 at the moment, and there are significant challenges that the UK economy is facing. You know, that inflation at 10.1% year on year on the past reading, coupled with what some would argue has been a slow response by the BOE in terms of initiating its rate hiking cycle, as well as the issue with energy prices, which is being faced by the whole of the Eurozone with regards to natural gas imports from Russia. And coupled, or rather on top of this, we have a fiscal situation which may deteriorate in the short term, especially given the recent announcement by the new Prime Minister in terms of gas caps. So a combination of a weakening currency, heightened inflation, somewhat behind the curve central bank, rising energy prices, weakening consumer demand, and a deteriorating fiscal situation has led to the currency being at its lowest level in more than 30 years relative to the dollar.
On that note then, regarding Prime Minister Liz Truss's pledge to deal with the high energy costs, what does it mean for the Bank of England? Does it help or hinder them when it comes to their fight against inflation?
It may hinder them to some extent. Now, the government has said that they feel that this price cap will reduce inflation and lead to lower borrowing costs in the region of £10 billion on a monthly basis going forward. However, spending 150 billion on a price cap strategy obviously means increased bond issuance. The government has ruled out windfall taxes, and so this will be funded by heightening borrowing costs, which means that we expect bond yields, of course, to respond and to increase. And this makes the BOE's job more difficult than it was before, because this would offset any benefits from lower inflation from the caps on electricity prices. And so it does complicate the picture as well. Another risk, of course, is that this cap becomes permanent. Now, it has been set at 2 years, so it will expire in 2024. But if gas prices have not moderated by that point in time, and no one knows exactly what the outlook is as far as geopolitical concerns are So that could lead to the gas policy being maintained. Even worse, if gas prices continue to increase in the short term, then of course the government has to cover that subsidy in terms of the margin between where the cap is and where market prices are. And so that is also a concern. Another issue with the gas policy is, of course, it focuses on households, as it should, but in terms of business, the cap only lasts for 6 months, following which I suppose the government will look on an ad hoc basis and decide which industries to continue supporting. That itself could be a quite contentious situation. So there are a bit of uncertainties with regards to how successful this policy is going to be. And of course, that does complicate matters for the Bank of England.
Thato, thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Would have loved to get your perspective in terms of your sense regarding local earnings season so far. Nonetheless, we'll continue to cover all of that next week.